Thank you, Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. We'll take the SGF now.
The first question is a follow-up on the matter of demurrage, especially as it relates to the conflict between NACO, I think, and SACOL. I had reported that to the Honorable Minister of Aviation, who promised that he was going to be here today to give a clarification in respect of that, but unfortunately, he's indisposed. But I can assure you that we'll follow up on that and he gives the clarification, because that had to deal with his industry, so I defer to him, being a member of this committee, to give that explanation. So that will be given. But I know that the one that has to deal with issues of demurrage regarding the maritime industry, we have spoken about it here, and I got confirmation then from the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Shippers Council that had been waived. I don't know whether the situation has changed. That's with regards to the maritime industry. This one has to deal with issues of aviation, and like I said, I've thrown that back at the Honorable Minister of Aviation. I think he will join us tomorrow, and he should be able to give clarification in respect of that. Well, the other question has to do with subsidy or some kind of discount with regards to validation processes. I think the appropriate person to have dealt with that is the Honorable Minister of Health, because the agencies that deal with validation of drugs and all medical consumables fall under his jurisdiction. Basically, those institutions are either the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research, NIPRI, or the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, and NAFDAC. These are the ones that deal with things that have to with consumables, food and drugs, and the processes of their certification. 20 million, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that is the amount. Like you rightly observe, most of the prescribed cure are on the social media platform. Nothing definitive. I read one article that alluded to the fact that we should give patients to be tried for a trial purpose. I felt that's not the way to go. The American equivalent of our NAFDAC, I think yesterday or so, had given authorization for a particular administration of a particular process. It must have gone through some processes of validation, and they are staggered in different stages. At this stage, this is what happens. At the second stage, this is what happens. Even the production of vaccines, that's what happens. It's not that the vaccine, the combinations for the production of the vaccines are not ready, but the processes of their examination and trial takes a very long time, so that we do not end up with the situation we ended up in this particular country of not too long ago. We had a situation, I think, with one of the manufacturers with regards to polio in Kano that became a subject of major litigation involving hundreds of millions of dollars that was eventually settled out of court through some arbitration or some negotiation. So no manufacturer will want to expose himself to those kind of contentions and litigations. That's why they allow it to run through a process. And even when they get to my little knowledge of the understanding of how it works, even when it gets to the trial level, for those that are going to be used for the purposes of the trial, there must be some kind of authorization received from those patients before those drugs or vaccines or any form of treatment is administered to them. So there are processes. My encouragement to our people, our researchers, and those that are involved in the processes of manufacturing drugs, especially our homegrown cure, they should be patient and they should run it through a process. And that is the only way we can have it validated. But I think when the question was to see if subsidy can be put in place, I think the Honorable Minister of Health would look at all these things, because we are so much in a hurry to obtain a homegrown cure. And all the countries of the world are doing similar things, trying to abridge even the processes of the trials to shorten the time. Ordinarily, from the little literature I've read about COVID-19, is that we are not expecting any vaccine to be on the shelf until 2021, towards the end of 2021. That's for even industries that have perfected the processes of manufacturing of this vaccine. I was listening to the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, who was saying that by the end of 2021, they should be able to provide the world with about a billion in terms of quantity of vaccines. Towards the end of 2021, we're in 2020, and this is the time that the COVID-19 is ravaging the entire world. But they are not in a hurry to release those drugs. So my appeal to our homegrown researchers and those that are involved is, let them be patient, let them go through the protocol of validation, so that at the end of it, if there are drugs or their syrup or whatever they produce is found fit for human consumption or administration, they will receive the appropriate certification. But in terms of the amount, the Honorable Minister of Health is here. He supervises those agencies. I know he will look at it if it's a thing that can be considered for discount. The other issue is with regards to the presence of the police. We will make it a point of duty probably once a week. We get one of the law enforcement agencies. We have permanently on the committee the Office of State Security. But most of the questions have always been in the issues of the police being the lead agency with regards to internal security. So they are always the face of the security and intelligence arm in this kind of situation. But let me assure you that we are working collaboratively even with the National Human Rights Commission. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, I got a letter from them addressed to the various departments and also the Minister of Police Affairs, cataloging the infractions on human rights conducted during the last 1 or 2 weeks. And it is expected that the agencies will respond to those allegations, and processes of investigations will be put in place. So we take note of that. If that will provide our people some comfort, we'll try to shortlist them to also speak to the nation about what they are doing and eliciting the support of our people so that we can work in concert to deal with the issues as they arise. Hoteliers have written offering their hotels. Well, I think the Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs will tell you of his experiences when he was now ready to get the hotels. It's one thing for the people to say we offered our hotel. When it is time to get the hotel, that's when the issues begin to arise. But we are fortunate. Some understood the need of the time, and they made their hotels available. And that's how we've been able to bring in the number that we have brought in. And as we recycle these ones after the 14-day quarantine, the exit, the processes of decontamination of the hotels would be put in place so that we can receive a new batch of people to come in. I hope I hope the states too will take note of that, because you can see that it's just because of the fact that it is the federal government that is handling the evacuation. If not ordinarily, all these provisions are supposed to be made available at the state level, and the state ought to take the responsibility of providing those things. Al-Majris sent back after having been intercepted, and you don't know, you see the interception, and when they are asked to turn back, but you don't know the next destination they get to. Well, I think invariably most of the times when they are intercepted, they are asked to go back to the places from where they are coming from. That's what I think happens, because that is the only destination they know, and they are always referred back to those various destinations. But as a matter of policy, the Presidential Task Force has stated several times that this is not the time. One, we have a protocol that says that interstate movement is banned. And this came as a result of input from the state governors. You must have seen the letter they wrote us, urging the federal government to make it of federal application, because that will carry more weight. It is different for one state to block its borders or to ban interstate travel across its borders. If it does not apply, if it does not have universality of application all over the country, the effectiveness will not be there. Now, it's been put in place. So the subnationals that even requested for that should not be seen as the ones that are also disregarding what they requested for. Because if you say interstate travels are banned, except for essential services, I don't think the movement of Al-Majris at this time is an essential service. I prefer to leave it at that. So as much as possible, most of them have received, some have returned. And I believe that those who are returned were returned like back to center from where they came from. Cattle rearers who were intercepted too in the process of moving across state borders, particularly in the south-south and the southeastern states. I've taken up that with the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, because he has a subcommittee that deals with movement of farm produce, agricultural inputs, and the rest. And I've also taken it up with the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, because he leads the agency that is the lead agency in terms of facilitating the movement across the country. And what I need to do now is to ask for response from them as to what has happened with those situations. But it's a little bit difficult and complex, because like you saw the governor of Kaduna State climbing a truck and looking into the truck and finding people in the midst of food stuff. So it creates a lot of problem even for the state administration in wanting to ensure that, yes, we allow for movement of foodstuff across our borders, but not with a large number of human beings that kind of defeat the intended purpose of the ban on the state travel. We'll continue to make that appeal, that as much as possible, people should not be moved across state borders now, so that we can, as much as possible, reduce the number of movements. And finally, generally, we have spoken severally about the level of compliance, and it has always gone out as a word of appeal. And the question that was asked was, do we continue appealing? Why is there no enforcement? There have been enforcement all across the states, even FCT. They have set up mobile courts, and on a daily basis, people are being prosecuted, people are being fined, which is about the only thing we can do now, because we don't want to overburden our correctional centers that are already overburdened with inmates. But I know that all over the country, there are mobile courts. And people are being tried, people are being fined, and people are paying the fine. And the next day, in defiance of the appeal, they still go out. And that is why we always want to be persuasive in our appeal. Because the danger it poses is to everybody. And I will make this appeal too. I can see a lot of order with the way media is set up here. But for those of you that had the privilege of being with us today, I think at the Dome, even the chief host had to keep insisting, keep social distancing, separate yourselves, don't cluster. So you see, it's a culture, it's an attitudinal thing that we need to really work on as a people to ensure that once basic rules are set, we should try to obey those basic rules and make sure that at least as much as possible, for our own interest and for the interest of the other people that we're supposed to protect and safeguard, we do the needful. So I think we will continue to make that appeal, because we can never get tired of making that appeal. It is important, it is necessary that we take a collective responsibility of driving these processes. You can see that as much as we are trying, the figures are rising. That is explainable because we have ramped up our testing. Today at the Dome, not only did we commission a 300-bed facility, it came along with a testing lab that can test about 200 per day, and it can be ramped out to about 1,000 per day. So we are increasing the testing. And as much as we increase the testing, the chances of picking out those that are already infected or incubated is higher. And you keep seeing the figures rising. But it doesn't scare us, because that is the intendment, to get as many people who have been infected tested and confirmed, so that you can now isolate them and take them out of the community as quickly as possible, before they continue to infect others. So I want to thank you again and wish you a very good evening. Thank you.